Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. To bring in part 4 of What If the Reds and Blues were part of Overwatch. Link down in the description of the fanfiction of this, What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this isn't a scam. Chapter 7, Red Alert. Overwatch Base. Soldier 76 was getting the assigned team ready for battle. Winston requested to see how each of them would do in the battlefield. Going with Sarge, Griff, and Simmons were May, Lucio and. As they were getting ready, Sarge was shaving his long white beard in a mirror near the docking bay. Griff was polishing his griff shot with a rock and a piece of cloth like it was his new baby. Simmons was still trying to get the configurations of his arm working in case it was to lock up. As Soldier 76 walked by, Sarge finished shaving, then caught up to him. "Sir, lock, cocked and loaded, and reporting for duty," Sarge said as he stood at attention. Soldier 76 looked at Sarge as he saw it wasn't the same man from the farm, at ease. "You ready for this, Soldier?" 76 asked. Sarge cracked a smile. "Hey, you kidding, I was looking for a reason to get back into action," he said as he threw his shotgun over his shoulders. 76 nodded. "All right then, as you were," he said as he walked away. The group loaded up into the transport and braced for a long trip to battle. Many hours later, Route 66. As the crew set up camp in a vacant diner, which was probably closed due to the recent crash and Talon activity outside. Everyone gathered around in a circle around DVA and her large mech. She pulled up a holographic map out of her back pocket. "Okay, so Talon has been using this or is one of their major transportation routes. Activity of them flowing through this place with large shipments have been reported in numerous times. If we get this area in Overwatch control, then we can use this to our advantage and reduce their export and import business," DVA said as she rested against her mecha. Lucio crouched down. "However, they made this place incredibly tight, with one wall here," he said as he pointed near a gas station called Big Earl's, "and here," he said as he pointed to another wall in the cliff, "and there's Talon everywhere," he said as he looked at the three newcomers. May looked at Sarge. "Any plans?" she asked the older soldier, hoping he would have a genius plan. Sarge stroked his chin. Simmons scratched his head. Griff answered, "We'll wing it," he said. Sarge and Simmons then nodded in agreement. Lucio was confused. "You want to go up against highly trained mercenaries and wing it?" he asked. "Mercenaries who are heavily armed and numerous, and you want to wing it?" he asked again. The Reds looked at each other, and gave each of their own replies. Sarge said, "Uh-huh." Simmons said, "Yep." Griff finished, "Pretty much." Lucio, DVA and May shared a look with one another. "All right, but don't freeze when the bullets start flying," May demanded from them to be professional. 5 minutes later, the group bust through the doors of the diner and began to rush to the cart to claim the new territory. As Sarge neared a corner, he rose his fist up in the air, signaling to stop. He then started to make quick hand motions with his right arm, making weird gestures along with unusual shapes, putting up multiple fingers and things in that sort. He finished as he turned back to see everyone looking at him with confused faces. Griff pinched the middle of his eyes. "Sarge, you've known me and Simmons for a long time, so I'll say what we're all thinking. We have no fucking clue what that means," he said slowly. Sarge grunted. "5 sharpshooters up top, 13 infantry on bottom," he said. Simmons went in front of Sarge to check, then used his robotic eye. "Sarge, you're close, 6 sharpshooters up top, 17 infantry on the bottom," Simmons concluded. Sarge began thinking up a plan. "All right, Simmons and Griff stay with the payload. May go up top and use the tunnels and your ice walls to give us time away from the other enemies when I give the signal. Lucio and DVA, you two kids go around the rock, then sneak onto the roof, then blast them to hell," he said as he loaded up his shotgun. DVA questioned Sarge's plan. "Wait, what are you gonna do?" she asked. Sarge smiled. "Don't worry, you get important parts, I get the fun part," he said as he placed his shotgun on his back. Sarge simply walked out as if he was taking a leisure walk to the market. He looked around as he was spotted. Soon he had every gun fixed on him. He walked up to one of the mercs. "Good afternoon, gentlemen, great day for a walk, isn't it?" he said as he kept his smile. One of the Talon mercs walked forward. "The fuck you doing here, old man?" he asked. Sarge's smile faded. "I'd like you all to stop using this place as a base, if it's not too inconvenient," he said. The soldier got in Sarge's face. "Why don't you fuck off?" he said. Sarge looked behind him. "I'm sorry," he said as he slippery something onto his fingers. "I don't know what your generation's problem is with listening," he said. Sarge let one massive right hook go straight into his helmet as he reached for his shotgun with his left hand. He then had it set in his hands as he fired a buckshot into the air. Simmons and Griff came around the corner with the payload as Simmons threw a personal shield onto his large buddy. Griff began to fire grenades to the side of the roof as he switched to the bottom floor where multiple people had begun to come to shoot them. Sarge backed up as he retreated to his men as he fired buckshots to blast them back. May came out of the tunnel with her ice wall as she raised the wall off to block the enemy's gunfire from harming her team. When the wall was up, she had begun to fire icicle shots at her enemies. The enemy had begun to shoot at her position as she retreated back to the cave and moved towards Griff and Simmons to the cart. DVA and Lucio got onto the roof as Lucio booped 3 sharpshooters off the building. Just as the other 3 were about to shoot him, DVA came crashing over them as she crushed 2 and smacked the other off the roof. They went to the edge and hopped off to regroup onto the payload with Sarge and the Reds. As the payload neared the wall, they all knew a storm of gunfire was waiting on the other side of the door. Sarge looked to DVA. "Hey gamer girl, show me what you got," he said. DVA smiled as she flew to an opening on the right side of the Rocky Mountains. She saw the troops lined up at the door and prepared her ultimate, "Nerf this," she shouted as she hopped out of her mecha and dropped it onto the soldiers. She then pulled out her phone and took a selfie to send to everyone as she made the duck lips. As the doors opened, Sarge saw the aftermath of DVA's mecha and was impressed. He saw her hustle back with her pistol. "That good enough for you, old man?" she said, tapping his shoulder. Sarge laughed. "All right kiddo, get back and get ready, this fight ain't over yet," he said as he messed with her hair. As they continued to grow closer to the second door, the enemies formed a blockade in front of wall. Griff and Simmons acted like it was nothing they couldn't handle as they approached the enemy's defenses. However, they weren't expecting the grunts to come with a boss of their own. Standing over them all was a large man in Talon armor wielding 2 miniguns in his hands. He began to lay waste to the team as he forced Sarge into a bar on his left and the rest of the team to go take cover behind a building on the right. They saw he apparently had no need to reload as his bullets were somewhat unlimited. Everyone was pinned down as they had no idea what to do at this point in time. Griff looked at Simmons. "Simmons, is your ultimate ready?" Griff asked. Simmons nodded. "Yeah, problem is that if he moves I'll have to charge it again," he said. Everyone began shouting suggestions to keep the enemy still. "I could place freeze him with my ice gun if someone distracts him," May suggested. "I could boop him in the path of the ultimate," Lucio added. "Play Black Betty by Spiderbait." As they all kept going over suggestions for what to do, someone was slowly walking out of the bar with a lasso in his hand. Sarge had on a cowboy hat on and a piece of straw in his mouth as he had this strange look in his eyes. He stood in the center of the street as he held his rope and prepared for one epic showdown in history. He lifted his hat to get a view of his target as his grip tightened on the lasso. The enemy spun his Gatling guns. Sarge swung the rope over his head as he was beginning to get momentum. The enemy raised their guns up. Sarge tossed the lasso, letting it fly through the air and land on a tree behind the gunner. The gunner began to laugh as Sarge grinned and did a trick where he was able to get the rope to twist around his enemy. He then placed his foot over one part as he held the rope with all his might. "Simmons, now," he shouted. Simmons saw what Sarge had done and placed his arm in position as he fired off his ultimate. Simmons's arm opened up as he revealed all his weaponry from before, all fully loaded. He had the laser dot sight aimed directly in the minigunner's chest and waited for the perfect moment. Sarge held on tight and almost lost his grip until May protected him with an ice wall, and Griff, DVA, and Lucio grabbed onto the rope with him. Simmons unleashed his full power as he held onto his arm to steady the fire. Simmons dropped his robotic arm to the floor as he grew weak from what he just released. He saw that the firepower left a huge cloud of dust, ash, and smoke. He then saw the minigunner's feet come from the smoke first, as he grew nervous if that wasn't enough to work. Until the smoke cleared, showing a large hole in the center of the minigunner as he collapsed to the floor. Simmons regrouped with Sarge and the others as they all rallied to the payload. DVA got her mecha back after a long time to build it up again. They all braced for the final push, knowing they'd be in very close corner combat. Griffshot looked back at Sarge. "Plan, Sarge?" he asked, hoping for a smart one. Sarge saw that most of the team had their ultimates finally ready to use. He also saw that they were all pretty tired and were almost fight left in them. This wasn't the time for a football speech, this was the time for action. "Give it everything you got," he shouted as the final gates started to open. Simmons grabbed his battle rifle and braced for the final push of the day. May got Snowball ready to unleash one heavy blizzard at the enemy. Lucio got his gun ready to drop the beat for his friends as the doors begun to open. Sarge grabbed an extra shotgun from one of the dead enemies that they eliminated earlier. Griff pulled out a can with some blue glowing liquid in it and chugged it down. As the enemy braced for the doors, an orange blur came behind them and rammed a few over, leaving others confused. The orange blur came back again as the doors opened to have the rest of the troops at the door get mowed over. Finally the orange blur slowed just long enough to see it was Griff as he fired a barrage of grenades at the front of the opening. He got behind a wall just quick enough to avoid being shot by the enemy troops. Sarge did one heavy flank with May on his heels as she walled Sarge on the side with the most enemies. The enemies on Sarge's side had begun to laugh at the fact that Sarge was with them. "I'm not trapped with you. You are all trapped in here with me," he roared as he smiled and pulled out the second shotgun. He began to fire an endless supply of buckshots to attack his enemies with all he had. As the bullets flew all around him, he attacked his enemies from all around like his dream came true. Outside the ice wall the others had begun to catch up as Lucio dropped the beat to give Sarge and the others more health. May sent Snowball behind the enemies to freeze troops from killing off Sarge. DVA, Griff, and Simmons caught up to lay fire to the troops while they were moving the payload. Though the painful fight was over when they heard the familiar sound of Athena saying, "Victory," as though it was their sign the enemies had given up. The group stood there tired from the amount of work they had to do. Lucio, DVA and May leaned against the payload as they saw Sarge, Griff and Simmons head outside. The bar that Sarge had retreated into when the heavy assault troop came in, and where he found the jukebox music, was occupied. Griff hopped over the counter and grabbed 3 glasses and a bourbon of some kind. He poured the 3 of them shots as they raised their glasses in a tired victory. Soon they were joined by Lucio, DVA and May as they took seats next to the Red soldiers. Lucio spoke first, called Winston. "Pickup will be here in 20 minutes. He said as he grabbed an energy drink. DVA handed out her Gamer Fuel Mountain Dew to Lucio and herself, while May had a blizzard at the ready thanks to Snowball. Lucio saw Griff drinking from the bourbon from the bottle. "You got to take better care of yourself," he said. Griff chuckled. "Trust me, this cynical bastard will kill me before any poison or bullet will," he said as he pointed to Sarge. Sarge nodded. "He's right. I probably will," he said. Griff continued drinking as he and Sarge stared each other down, as Lucio and saw what was happening. Simmons attempted to repair his arm with a screwdriver as May saw his work. She spoke up. "Need any help with that?" she asked as she looked at him. Simmons looked back at her, then gulped and moved his head back. "No cough, no, I'm fine," he said as his voice squeaked. May wasn't planning on taking no for an answer. "At least let me hold your arm down so you don't end up hitting your face with your arm," she said as she pressed down her hands against different parts of his arm. Her chest was just gently on the table as he began to turn as red as his armor. His hand twitched as he tried his hardest to focus on his work. He felt as though he was burning in a frozen hell. After pickup, Gibraltar base. Soldier 76 had regrouped with Sarge on mission briefing and other things, as Lucio and tagged along to make sure everything was accurate. Simmons went to his room to smash his head against a wall for an hour. Griff had went to the kitchen to raid the pantry for any tasty snacks or treats. Winston caught up with the 2 old war dogs to deliver them some good news for once. He had his digital clipboard in his hand. "Oh, good news, while you were gone I managed to recruit additional members," he said as he handed Soldier 76 the clipboard. He went through the list to see familiar faces, alongside a few new ones as well. He looked at Sarge. "So you ready for a war?" he asked. Sarge smiled. "Hell yeah, slick," he said as they began to laugh. Chapter 8. Blue team, man with a secret. Church, Tucker, and Caboose were walking down the hallway of the Gibraltar base as they were catching up with each other. Just the three of them, no one else, no one to interrupt them at all. Seriously though, no one gonna step in. Damn it. A loud hefty voice shouted. Reinhardt came barging out of his room with a newspaper in his large-like hands. Caboose looked at his childhood hero. Is something wrong, Reinhardt? He asked. Reinhardt showed them the paper. The headline read, Dragons at Large, they're back and I know where it is they are going. Come, we have little time, he said as he headed to the airship. Caboose started following him, until Church grabbed his shoulder. Wait, Caboose, this is crazy, I can't let you go, he said. Caboose looked at Church in the eye. Church, this is my dream to be a crusader, you have to let me go please. I'll do anything, please. Just let me join him, please. Please, please, please. He begged. Caboose, I was going to say, I can't let you go alone. I'm going with you, he said. Really? Caboose asked happily. Really? Tucker asked nervously. Yeah, better than sitting here getting lazy and fat, soon I might look like Griff. Church said as he went to his room to grab what gear he needed. In Church's room, Church grabbed a small bag and started to put only the necessities, but stopped when he picked one object up. He held it in his hand as he puzzled on whether or not to bring it along in case of emergencies. He had been pondering on it for what felt like a full minute. Luckily someone distracted his thoughts. Hey, Tucker said from the doorway. Church nodded his head. Hey, he replied. Tucker saw the object in Church's hand as well as the item next to Church's leg. You bringing him to the battlefield? He asked. Church started shaking his head. You know I hate using him, but I use him only when I have to, he said, after he got up and went near the doorway. Remember the promise you made me? He asked. Tucker nodded. I do, but I'm not sure I have the heart to do it, he said. Church sighed. I know, let's just hope that day never comes, he said. Tucker pulled something out of his back pocket. Mercy told me to give these to you, he said as he tossed Church a small black case. Church opened it to reveal a pair of glasses that let him see perfectly clear, unlike before. Tucker kept talking about them. Winston had them modified to see thermal, night vision, X-ray, and who knows what else, he said. Church found a button that changed the lenses to a tinted sunglasses shade. Let's roll, he said. After one long trip to EICHENWALDE. The group of Reinhardt, Torbjorn, Caboose, Tucker and Church were waiting in a tavern for one of their last members. Reinhardt grew eager, either for revenge or for the person joining them. I can't wait for Bridget to get here so she can help us, he said in his mighty voice. Church looked at the tall armored man. She must be good if she trained under you, he said as he started to fix his sniper scope, knowing someone always messes with it. Torbjorn joined in the conversation. Oh, trust me, she's powerful, she's one of my 8 pride and joys, he said. Tucker looked at Torbjorn. 8. You do realize they make condoms for a reason, right? He asked. Torbjorn looked up at Tucker. What's a condom? He asked. Tucker looked surprised. You're kidding me, he asked. While Caboose was petting his gun, he grabbed the helmet to his costume as he heard the last teammate enter. Sorry I'm late, I was occupied trying to sneak in unnoticed, she said as she entered. Ah, everyone, this is Bridget, Reinhardt shouted as she entered. Sup, Tucker said. Hey, Church said. Caboose saw her and became mesmerized by her young beauty. Her freckled cheeks and nose were like sprinkles on her smooth cheeks. Her hair just seemed to flow perfectly down the side of her head like a magic whip. Her armor made her look strong and caring, as paladin armor is supposed to make people look like. To sum up, he was speechless. My name is, Caboose started to stutter. Luckily Church saved him. The name's Church, Afro Samurai over there is Tucker, and big guy here is Caboose, he said, patting Caboose on the back. Bridget grew a large smile. This is Caboose. Reinhardt has already told me so much about you. He says you want to become a crusader just like him. He actually told me that he wants me to make armor for you. Now it's going to be Di-Fi, she said as Caboose slowly focused on every detail of her face. Reinhardt snapped the two out of the conversation. Come on, everyone get ready for battle, he said. Church talked to Caboose. Hey Caboose, your football skills still good? He said, tossing Caboose his special gloves. Caboose nodded. Yep. He said. Show me. Church said, grabbing a foam shield. Lineman block. Church shouted as Caboose put his hands up, and a shield like Reinhardt's generated in front of him as Caboose chopped his feet. Church stood in front of Caboose and braced for what came next, linebacker blitz. He shouted as Caboose charged him straight to a wall, embedding Church into it. Church smiled. Good job Caboose, now help me out. He said. Wow, Reinhardt was right to choose you to be his student. She said as she saw Caboose's two abilities. Caboose was about to begin stuttering until the countdown started. They all burst through the middle doors as they charged through the main street with 3 shields up. Caboose, Bridget, and Reinhardt covered Torbjorn as he began to set up his turret with his hammer. Church went prone as he began to scope in and start picking off targets that seemed to be the main threats to his team. He picked off at least 4 as Torbjorn built his turret and started mowing down more of the Dragon clan. Tucker sneaked his way to the left side as he knew that Caboose would be safe and have people cover him. He made it to the cart where multiple Dragon members were posted up. He pulled out his 2 aqua blue blades as he went behind one of them and slashed him across the chest, then slashed his guts, and finally stabbed his face. Tucker received the attention of 7 goons, so I'm giving you a chance to lay down your weapons and give up and maybe we can work something out. He suggested. They dropped their guns and pulled out bats, steel pipes, and small knives as they circled him. Tucker shook his head. You try to give them an option. He said. One behind him attempted to stab him with a knife, but he did the splits as he stabbed him from behind. He launched himself up in the air and brought himself down as 2 with bats tried to swing at him, but weren't met with blades to the skulls. 3 with pipes attempted to swing at Tucker but were blocked by a swift aqua streak of light. Tucker placed the swords on his back as he did. The 3 people who were around him fell to the floor. The last guy tried to take a stab at Tucker but was met with a suppressed bullet to the head. Tucker stood by the cart as the group finally arrived at the cart. Church nodded. Seriously Tuck, did you have to show off that much? He asked. Tucker shrugged his shoulders. I have no idea what you mean. He said. Church, Reinhardt, Torbjorn, Caboose, Tucker and Bridget all grouped up at the cart as they pushed it to a wooden door blocking the path. As the doors were busted down, Reinhardt charged forward to the battle as he started to smash Dragon dirt bags. He laughed, until Bridget and Caboose charged with him. Bridget spoke first. Reinhardt, you can't just rush forward like that. She said. Reinhardt laughed. Huh, why? He asked. Suddenly a group of Dragon people came out all at once and formed a fire line with their guns. Reinhardt, Caboose, and Bridget put up their shields, but it was all for nothing as their shields were burnt through. The 3 saw their shields were burnt down as they retreated back to the cart with the rest of the team. Reinhardt and Caboose went left, however Bridget wasn't behind them when they were out of the fire. Caboose saw her go right where she would be cut off from the rest of the group. The Dragons would be able to get her easily as she was only a support hero armed with a flail. Should have said this sooner. If you read the Overwatch comics you'll know the Dragons are like the Los Muertos but are in Germany. There are so many people who are confused right now, I can tell. He grabbed Freckles as he charged through to the other side and kept on firing at them. Freckles was able to adjust the gun to hit the most number of Dragons that were possible. He was getting hit by a few of the rounds, but it was good that the gear he was wearing was bulletproof. He made it to Bridget as he and her dug in the small room. Church saw Reinhardt charge back to the cart, but he was missing someone. Wait, where's Caboose? He asked. Torbjorn asked another question. Where's Bridget? He asked. Reinhardt looked back. They were right behind me last I saw. He said. Church pressed a button on the side of his glasses and switched the lenses to thermal. He saw 2 largish yellow figures, next to them a glob or cluster of other yellow and orange figures. They're still over there. Church shouted as he started to go towards them. Tucker held Church back. Church, that's suicide. You're walking into a war zone. He said. Church kept fighting back. I can't lose Caboose, he's too important to us, let me. He said as he dropped his small bag on the floor. The bag opened up revealing an axe with a buzzsaw-like blade attached to it, and a mask with the right eyelid sewn shut closed. The mask was white with red accents that have faded to brown because that was blood, not paint, it also had a large air filter in the mouth. Tucker looked at Church. "Don't do it. Church, we can do this without him," he said. Church pushed Tucker to the side as he grabbed the buzz axe and the mask. He looked back for a moment.